Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for the slightly late start if you are listening to us live. I am Nicholas Lorimer, your host, and today I'm joined by Mr. Michael Morris. Michael, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Nick. Nice to be with you both.
Very good to have you with us. Mr. Hermann Pretorius. Hermann, how are you? I'm sure Pretorius is very
I'm
well
well.
now.
I'm well. It's a beautiful day. What is there to complain about except except the weather? I mean, it's
There was actually a story we considered doing today, but haven't done about the rugby game on the weekend. But just to say that if we win or lose by 1 point in the final, I think I may have a cardiac episode because it's it's just a bit much.
Yes.
As someone on Twitter said, to watch the Rugby World Cup South Africa play, you have to have medical aid. But
or the NHI.
That'll finish us off. Let us get on to the first story for today, and this is about the city of Joburg's council sittings. So, city of Joburg's been lots in the news. It's had all sorts of drama in its council sittings, and a story that keeps coming up again and again is how much each of these individual council sittings cost. The DA has claimed that a single sitting of the Johannesburg City Council can cost 600,000 rand, with the majority of that cost going towards catering. The speaker, Colleen Mokibule, disputes this. She says, no, it's more like 400,000 rand per sitting. As you know, if you've listened to the show on Friday, the city of Joburg is not the greatest financial position. It is having difficulty paying various service providers, including its debt collectors. And so Joburg has the most councillors of any city in the country because it's the biggest. It's got 270 councillors. Then you've got a place like the city of Cape Town, which spends about 300,000 rand per council sitting for its 231 councillors. They don't cater. The city of Tshwane doesn't cater for its councillors, and so it's not entirely clear why the councillors need catering. Now, this is going to make me unpopular with my former colleagues. I was a city councillor in the city of Johannesburg, so I actually do know what the catering is like, and those sessions are very long, and so it is a sort of welcome respite. Although I suspect that one can, as we did, we would sometimes go out and eat somewhere else because the canteen would get very crowded. But what's kind of crazy is how the food, you think, 400,000, 600,000, whatever the bill is for the food, and then you're expecting something kind of lavish, but actually it's really not that great. We're talking like kind of cheap rice and stews and not very good chicken, and it's all just a bit kind of disappointing canteen food. So, I wouldn't be surprised if someone is, shall we say, not getting the most economic rate, considering how much corruption there is in procurement generally. That would not particularly surprise me. Mgeni local municipality, which is the only municipality run by the DA in KZN, only, I think, has spent 15,000 rand in total this year on their council sittings. Now, they only have 25 councillors, but they use this basically a little sound system, and that's about it. And give bottled water to everyone, which is, probably a good idea. Another little caveat from all this catering stuff going on in Joburg is apparently there was a Joburg council meeting which was postponed, or at least delayed for a couple of hours, because apparently the EFF was told the EFF told the speaker that no, we're not coming. We're having breakfast right now. Even though the meetings start at 10 traditionally in the morning. So, Michael, let me start with you. It's just kind of like it's like the perfect example of the sort of out of touch, wasteful expenditure. But at the same time, there's this element of like I said, the food quality isn't even that good. What do you make of the story?
I mean, all those things. Just a brief observation before we begin to look at the detail of this particular story. I think all South Africans are suddenly realizing, or perhaps not so suddenly, but certainly this year, have realized just how the cost of living is really hitting our pockets, and that food is really expensive. But having said that, if you look at this News 24 story, the former speaker calculates that catering costs working out to 800 rand per person. Now, that's a you go to a really good restaurant, you'd get a slap up meal for 800 rand per person. It's just astonishing that, particularly I think in a city that is not covering itself in glory, that has so many problems, that has a very significant poverty burden, and a deficit of investment in really important stuff: water, electricity, and all the rest of it, street signs, street cleaning, and clearing, making sure that its own buildings are safe and not going to roast people inside them. It's just astonishing that there isn't just a sense that perhaps this is something that spending that really ought to be cut right down to the bare minimum. And to follow the Mgeni example, perhaps bottled water and perhaps sandwich dispensers that people can get their own sandwiches from. Yeah, so it is quite shocking, I think.
I mean, councillors don't earn like a bad salary in the city of Joburg. Councillors earn sort of 30 grand. You can 30 grand a month after tax. You can get your own lunch on that. And it's not like you're in the middle of nowhere. You are in Brompton. There are quite a few places to eat. Herman, what do you make of all this?
Well, I must say, you're going to hate me for this, but I can't resist. I think this is cater deployment gone wrong. Okay, there we go. Got it out of my system. No, you know what? This made me think. I think we just lost half our audience, so we're now down to 2 people. No, I think it made me think of this example of Mitt Romney when he came in to save the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics in about 2003-ish, 2006-ish, thereabout. It was massively in debt. The whole effort was in debt. He was recruited from Bain Capital to come in as a turnaround specialist and save the Winter Olympics. And it turned out to be the first Winter Olympics to actually make a profit. And one of the measures that he took was at the meetings of the organizing board, he would purchase pizza from the budget of the Olympic budget, but then everyone who wanted a slice of pizza would have to pay $1 for the slice of pizza. And because there would be 12 slices and the pizza would only cost $7, the committee, the whole initiative would make $5 in profit every pizza sold during the meetings or consumed during the meetings of the organizing committee. And it reminds me of him just saying, look after the small, look after the cents, and the dollars look after themselves. If you're in a city where streets are literally exploding due to bad infrastructure management, to where you have billions of rands worth of infrastructure damage, bad municipal office buildings, perhaps cut down on the catering budget. Perhaps that's the one thing that you should decide, this isn't the best place for the money to go. We have our cities falling apart. But what's worse is this also puts pay to the argument that we see so often from our friends on the left, is the idea that more money thrown at something makes it better. I've seen the catering Nick refers to. I mean, it's really awful, actually. I've been to school hostel lunches with
come on, the soggy green beans and tastic rice are the height of culinary experience.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they're not green to start with, it's sort of they just progress throughout the meal to become something culinarily interesting, like a Heston Blumenthal pudding. But the point is that it is so stupid, so wasteful, so out of touch, and so symbolic of the idea that massive amounts of money must mean value or something in some way. And hopefully we get to the ANC NEC economic discussion where there's this idea of more intervention, more spending to get the economy back on track. My goodness, spending can't even get lunch back on track.
Very well said. Michael, any final thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, nothing really to add, just to other than to enthusiastically endorse all those points. You know, we really need to take spending seriously. It's as literally as simple as that. If you want to save money, if you want to cut back on things, you want to be able to have money available to spend on what's important, you've really got to make these difficult choices. It's not that hard, as Hermann's illustration shows. Yeah. Important.
So we spent, what is it, 200 Rand per person on every single councillor. That'd be like 54,000 Rand or something.
Exactly.
to cater for everyone.
And I'm sure that caterers out there who would, they jump at delivering a really wholesome meal for 200 Rand a person. You know, I think,
Exactly. Anyway, absolute madness. Let us move on to our next story. And this is about following up on that horrific case where members of what appeared to be Paul Mashatile's V.I.P protection unit beat people on the side of the road on camera for, we can't seem to tell what the reason was. Doesn't look like there was any urgent danger, despite their claims that they were protecting the deputy president. Apparently, the 8 men accused of being involved in this are back at work. Now, the police have said that this is normal disciplinary procedure and that if a disciplinary inquiry takes longer than 60 days to finish, they automatically lift the suspension. However, they have decided that until the disciplinary process is concluded, the men will not be out on the streets. They will be confined to the office. I'm not really sure how a VIP protection officer, what they do in the office. But anyway, the men are also at the same time facing 12 charges, including pointing a firearm, reckless and negligent driving, malicious damage to property, assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, obstruction of justice, and assault by way of threat, and are currently out on bail for 10,000 Rand each. Michael, you had some comments about this before the show, that there's just, it's been more than, as just been said, it's been more than 60 days since these guys were suspended. This was an outrageous event, which has already got serious criminal charges against all the people involved. And yet, disciplinary process isn't wrapped up. I mean, there's footage of the event. There's the statements they've taken from the guys. What more do they need to do?
Yeah. And it's, there's complete lack of seriousness about it. It's the tragedy is that that sentiment permeates throughout not just the civil service, but the society. Everybody begins to get the sense that you can actually do the most awful things, be seen to be doing it, and there'll be no consequences. And I think it contributes fatally to that spirit, which is a spirit is quite the wrong word. That idea that works like a rot in our society, certainly in our civil service, where accountability is one of the key things in all the most important areas of state activity, health, policing, education. We want people to have a much acuter sense of being accountable, being held accountable, there being consequences for any step out of line, and until we do that, until we can get that kind of ethos in our public service, we are going to continue to drift down the road towards decline and failed status. So it is something very important. It's shocking that we haven't heard anything more from the government itself, the departments involved. I think also that Action Society is actually the organization that's really driving the pressure on the government on this one. That too, we're having to rely on civil society to do the job of the people who are meant to uphold the law and to sustain this idea of the rule of law in our society. And it just is absent, and that really is a shocking thing. So it's very good that the media at least is keeping a close eye on this, asking the questions, writing about it all the time. This is absolutely what we have to do, is just keep the attention on this and not let anyone get away with it.
So, Hermann, you have a bit of legal knowledge, and I appreciate that when you are following through processes, that it's important not to rush them, because it can compromise the process, and then you can let people who don't deserve to be let off. You can cause their case sort of to be thrown out. But this doesn't seem like a particularly complicated situation. I can't think of, perhaps you can think of one because you know more about the law than I do, but I can't think of a reason why 60 days is not really enough to wrap up this egregious case.
Yeah, no, it is bizarre that you not only do you have eyewitnesses, not only do you have the victims willing to give the information about the assault on them, you also have it on film. It is the idea of a prima facie case being buildable here is so obvious. It is I cannot imagine what the delay here is. I cannot imagine what took 60 days to at least charge them disciplinarily. And if there is something that took them 60 days to delay this procedure, perhaps the police or IPID could be bold enough and kind enough to the rest of the South African public who might get punched in future to tell us what has been the cause for this delay. It is absolutely bizarre that these people just don't care. This, and I've said this before, in other countries, this would be enough to end several political careers, an incident like this. But here, it is just another day. Doesn't matter. That doesn't get picked up. Justice delayed. I mean, it just adds to this growing list of when the state abuses its citizens. No one, even in the most blatant cases, gets held accountable.
Yeah.
No, exactly right. And we've seen so many terrible cases which have ended. Luckily, no one died in this circumstance, but we have seen cases where, and of course, the case of Collins Corsa comes to mind, where the people affiliated with the police and army killed someone, and to my knowledge, have not faced any serious repercussions for it. Michael, some final thoughts from you, but I will say that the police spokesperson did assure the public that the investigation, the departmental investigation into this case, was at an advanced stage.
Yeah, one should hope so. Yeah, I mean, when did this happen? July, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I mean, that's, and it was a high-profile case involving the protector, so-called, of a very high-profile politician. You would have thought, if the country is really serious about saying, this is we serve the people, we have standards, this is going to be an example that we're going to use to demonstrate this. It's so quite shocking. The only final thought is this very great risk, I think, of cynicism seeping into society, and not without grounds. People becoming cynical about the political process, about thinking that it's not worth reporting things, it's not worth voting in elections, it's not worth participating in the processes to determine how policing works or to determine which policies are applied, because the upshot, is going to be the same, or they're going to be official indifference. And so I think that just as a final thought is something that always worries me with these sorts of stories. Is that we don't see it. It's happening right across the country, in homes, in lounges, in shebeens, where people are watching television or just reading the media. In their minds, they're thinking, is this surprising? Or we don't, it comes as no surprise to people eventually. And there's that terrible consequence of cynicism creeping into how we think about ordering our society or reordering it, or the hope of reforming it.
Exactly, which is why too much cynicism is the heart and soul of dysfunctional, autocrats, dysfunctional governance, corrupt governance, because they rely on you to give up hope, basically.
Yeah.
And it's an effective tool. It's worked in many countries around the world, so we must guard against it in South Africa. All right, let us move on to our next topic. And this is concerning leader of the EFF, Julius Malema. Sorry, Herman, Herman, you're lagging a bit, so I will remove you from the show quickly. Let us talk about our last story here. And this is concerning the EFF leader, Julius Malema, who has been in court trying to get his firearms charge thrown out back in 2018. So 5 years ago. These things take forever. He was filmed on a stage being handed a gun by his bodyguard and then firing it into the air, I think it was. He was charged with sort of improperly using a firearm, that kind of thing. And he has attempted to get the case thrown out in an East London magistrate's court. This was denied. And he then proceeded to go out, referred to the judge as incompetent, and that her ruling was, quote, a sponsored judgment. However, he did not elaborate on why he says these things. This has been harshly criticized by a group called Judges Matter, who said, therefore, Judges Matter comes out strongly in defense of judicial independence. Left unchallenged, Mr. Malema's comments will send a chilling message to other judicial officers that they should not dare to issue judgments against powerful figures who command a large audience. We call on Mr. Malema to immediately retract and apologize for his unfortunate comments. So while we wait for Herman to come back, Michael, what do you make of this? You made a really good point when we were discussing the story before the show. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I do hope that Herman comes back, because he made another very, very good run. But essentially what we feel is terribly important is that the Ministry of Justice ought to be saying something about this. The Judicial Services Commission ought to be saying something about this. And I think that the point that Herman was making in our chat before was this astonishing thing that Malema himself is a member of the Judicial Services Commission. These are the people who you kind of think of as being the custodians of the appointment process. They're keeping an eye out on our behalf for proper appointments, proper processes being pursued. And in a case like this, nobody has any objection to Julius Malema having a counter opinion or having a comment on how things turn out, but to make claims as he's made without offering any reason for doing so, and to be perfectly content to leave it like that, it simply is a threat. It's simply a threat, a bold threat to a judicial officer who has pronounced on an aspect of his conduct or his life. So it really is a very, very disconcerting thing, and we really, in cases like this, want certainly the Minister of Justice. I think it's perfectly within his purview to make a statement about this kind of threat to a judiciary that he is the custodian of.
No, I think that's exactly right. And it's one thing to say it about a constitutional court judge, but at least even though in a sense that's, I think, a more egregious sort of offense, a constitutional court judge is kind of much sort of higher in status. They're used to sort of taking some flack. They've got a kind of protection that is not afforded to a magistrate, who knows now that if they kind of go forward in the system, and these remarks are not rebuked, that this may be curtailing on their career, that this may be In some cases, it could encourage, EFF supporters maybe might say, well, maybe this person is a threat to the good order of the country, and so we must, punish them or something like that. Like a lone wolf kind of person. It's just poisonous for the entire system, and it's kind of bizarre, and this is a recurring theme that I always see in the way that the EFF interacts with the law. Is it does seem as though the ANC government is very unwilling to put its kind of foot down. Yeah. There are lots of in China, let's say, in an authoritarian situation like China, you have like corruption charges used as a way to eliminate your political opponents. Now, that's not something I encourage, but it's kind of curious to me that the ANC doesn't. And I think that's because ultimately there are some inside the ANC who are either worried about creating some kind of precedent by chasing after these cases ruthlessly, or alternatively are thinking of the EFF as, not something you entirely want to dismantle right now because maybe it'll be a future asset. I don't know. That's a bit conspiratorial, more than I would like. But Michael, before we move on, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's precisely the room that's allowed for this kind of speculation, which is harmful. Citizens of this country deserve to be put directly in the picture that this is not acceptable behavior from the highest authorities. The highest authorities need to assure us that they don't accept it. The ruling party, even. I mean, there's no reason why the ANC shouldn't be itself saying something about this, but certainly the Justice Ministry, which does have a direct interest in the system operating optimally and people being respected, and their judicial officers actually being safe. I mean, it comes, as you say, it comes literally down to the safety of people that we turn to deliver considered appraisals of right and wrong and criminal activity or innocence, guilt, and so on. Critically important to the nature of the society, the nature of our democracy, and our future. And if we don't take it seriously, we are placing it at risk. It's a great shame.
Exactly. All right, let's very quickly go over our very last story for today. I fear Hermann will not be able to make it back on time. He said that his internet had fallen over. But we've seen a lot of stories in the country. We've covered them on the show about the threats to the fiscus and how the finance ministry, led by Minister Enoch Godongwana, is very concerned that the country is heading for a kind of fiscal disaster. And specifically that the popular, and it seems key to the ANC's re-election campaign, 350 Rand social relief of distress grant may be put at risk if government does not rein in some of its spending right now. So his ministry put out this this paper suggesting that they take drastic steps to rein in costs, including a sharp reduction in spending, a freeze on advertising new appointments, and a call on departments to fund increases for public servants within departmental baselines, not to just kind of drain more from the fiscus. The ANC's National Executive Committee, which is their highest decision-making body outside of the conferences, has met to discuss this report, and without too much shock, they've kind of sort of rejected it. They said, no, we must have cost containment, but not austerity. Now, I'm not entirely sure what that means. It just, but they instructed their head of their committee on economic transformation to go away and come back with some suggestions for, firstly, how the economy can be grown, and also more facts on the matter, because they felt that they weren't properly informed about all of the aspects of this. They did, however, say that there was an acknowledgement that there is a revenue gap. So, Michael, this is just sort of more spinning tires in the dirt, in the sand kind of stuff.
Yeah,
just complete inability to take any sort of decisive action or to really even admit that there's a problem here.
Yeah. And after all, I mean, revenue gap and what was the other one? Cost containment. It doesn't sound quite so bad as austerity. There's something quite chilling about austerity. It sounds like something you don't really want to. It's a cold kitchen. It's a a thin sheet under bed in winter. It's not a very comforting place. But yeah, that's unfortunately the reality. So it's going to be an interesting tussle to see play out. They are very, very firmly engaged in this battle of ideas, this particular one. In the report drawn up by our CEO Dr. John Endres, on growth, focusing on growth, which was submitted to the multi-party chartered conference quite recently. This sets out exactly what the ANC should be looking at. They don't need to go off and look at ideas to grow the economy. They can simply look at the IRR's document. It's not expensive. It's relatively easily done. The country simply has to decide to do it, and that's really what we'd be hoping for. But yeah, it's going to be an important debate between now and the election. Interesting to see who, what kind of arguments come out of the ANC and Treasury.
Exactly. I just kind of love this bit where they say, where the head of the Economic Transformation Committee says that the NEC expects a comprehensive report on how to grow the economy and improve state revenue. It's like, why didn't anyone think of this before? Does this does this suddenly become, oh gosh, the economy hasn't been growing for like 10 years, guys. Maybe we should do something about that. I mean,
exactly.
It's only one of the most written about subjects in the public space. But no, the NEC needs its own report right now from its Economic Transformation Committee. It does make one wonder what the Economic Transformation Committee does if it's not even talking, if it's never talked about a growth strategy for the ANC. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. So we hope that you found this show interesting. We will be back, of course, tomorrow with the Daily Friend Wrap. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon. Cheers.